Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and 1.7.1 is out for the European and the North American servers today, and it brings a whole new tech tree of Soviet double-barreled heavy tanks. You're looking at the IS-2-II, and today I'm going to be giving you a full review of this tank, as I did play it extensively on the Russian server yesterday. I think I've about figured this out. So today, I'm going to give you big tips and tricks about specifically how to unlock the modules on this tank so you can either save the free experience or just invest it wisely, or even figure out whether you need to be spending free experience on this tank. I'm going to tell you how I think this vehicle stacks up to some of its competition, and I'm going to be showing you some of the best games that I had in my play session yesterday. So without further ado, let's see how this tank stacks up compared to its Tier 8 counterparts. The IS-2-II's main armament, its fully upgraded main armament that is a 100mm capable of doing 300 damage with every single shot. Now, that's not exactly impressive considering we already have a premium double-barreled tank inside the game that deals 390 alpha damage, so I'm hoping that there's quite a few other aspects of this vehicle that make up for the alpha damage impact that it will lose compared to its premium counterpart. And yeah, the damage per minute is immediately one advantage that the IS-2-II has. At 2,117, that's even higher than an IS-3A when it's fully unloaded, and because the IS-3A has an inverse auto-reloader where its damage per minute actually increases with the more rounds that it fires. This actually allows the IS-2-II to deal a surprising amount of damage fairly quickly to its opponents, and considering this alpha damage is 300, which isn't exactly horrific for a Tier 8 heavy tank, although it's definitely not very good, I actually kind of liked this trade-off of losing the alpha damage to be able to increase the damage per minute of the vehicle. One thing that is really nice about the vehicle as well is it carries a huge amount of ammunition, which allows it to take a variety of shells. You'll never run out of standard rounds or premium rounds, even in your very long engagements, if you're starting to whack up to that 5,000 or 6,000 damage mark. So the IS-2-II's premium shells are not heat, unlike on the 703-II. The 703-II gets 270mm penetration heat rounds, while the IS-2-II gets 256mm of APCR rounds. So the shell velocity on these rounds is 1,250, which actually makes this tank pretty darn good at sniping at long range against moving targets, but you won't have that extra penetration on the heat rounds that keeps its penetration across all distances that you would have on the premium 703-II. So obviously with a smaller gun, you'd hope that the gun handling would be better on this tank. And yeah, that's the case. 2.5 seconds aim time feels really good. And yet this tank, while it doesn't have quite as nice dispersion values as the 703-II, and it definitely does feel like it blooms out a little bit more, they're by no means bad. And 0.08 on the turret with the 100mm upgraded gun is just lovely. You'll be able to do a full turret turn and still feel that you're fairly accurate when you launch off that double barrel shot into your opponent. And yeah, the gun handling on this tank with vertical stabilizers as well feels very impressive indeed. The accuracy is also better than the two vehicles in this comparison. At 0.38, while it's not going to be the best sniper, I did a lot better with this 100mm than I would do with the 122mm on the 703-II. Now, one of the key advantages of this new tech tree of Soviet tanks is they've actually got really nice gun depression. And at 7 degrees, that makes this vehicle so much more flexible than most Soviet tanks. You can work ridge lines in the IS-2-II way better than I'm usually accustomed to in my Soviet heavies, so that's definitely one of the advantages of this new tech tree. So now on to mobility. 34 kilometers an hour forwards, yeah, it's not very good. 12 backwards, this thing definitely feels a little bit sluggish with regards to its top speed and its reverse speed. But its power to weight ratio is actually really nice with the upgraded engine, just under 15, which is way better than the 703-II and the IS-3A. The problem is that when your top speed and your reverse speed is so limited as it is in this tank, you can't really make use of that power to weight ratio. But then again, this vehicle does have very nice traverse speeds when you get the top traction engine on this tank. It will be able to be 33 degrees a second effective on hard terrain, way better than the 703-II. So it does make this thing feel a little bit more agile. And I just really wish that it had a little bit better top speed limit and reverse speed, and then it would be a real flexible double-barrel damage dealer on a ridgeline. So all of this flexibility does come at the price of the armor of this tank. 110 at the front, 90 at the side, and 60 at the rear. Although the turret armor looks better than the 703 too. So is that actually the case? Well, thankfully, TanksGG has a nice layout for the armor model on this tank. And we can immediately see, let's imagine that you're getting shot by an IS-2-II with its standard rounds with 221mm of pen. Yeah, already a big problem there, right, boys and girls? Yeah, the lower plate on this tank is fairly thick. It's going to hold up against tier 6s and tier 7s, but it's never going to hold up against 8s, 9s, and 10s, which you will be playing against. The upper hull on this vehicle is also rather awkward, unless, of course, you're using some of the gun depression this tank has, but even if you're angling it like this, you still only have 220, 230 millimeters of effective upper hull armor, which isn't going to hold up. The real problem with this vehicle is the complete lack of spacing all the way down the side. It's very flat. Most Soviet tanks have angled, spaced armor along the upper mid part of the hull, which allows them to be able to catch shots, irrelevant of how high the penetration is of the round that hits it. It doesn't exist on the IS-2-II, so be very careful with over-angling your side armor. You're not going to get away with it like you would do in the 703-II. But another thing that really is awkward about this tank is that the side armor, when you angle it, if you try and side scrape, does become a bit of a weak point. But again, it's not a weak point against tier 6s and 7s. It's 200 millimeters of effective armor. It's funny that some of the thickest armor on this tank is actually this plate here at 190 millimeters thick, way far thicker than all of the armor over the front of the tank, apart from this little bar here. It's almost as if Wargaming have learned from the issues of the 215B and the Panzer 7 that if you stop tanks from side scraping by giving them a weird angle here on the side of the hull, that they do become very weak. And so that's a little bit of an advantage that the vehicle gets. And it can side scrape out like this, but it's not going to be able to side scrape out super carefully, or safely, I should say. You have to be careful with your side scraping because you're not safe. That's what I'm trying to say. So the cupola on this vehicle is 100 millimeters thick with the top turret, and I didn't really feel like it was the easiest target to hit. If we look at the visual, it doesn't really look quite as prominent. I managed to hit a few good shots into here at decent distances. Maybe up in close quarters combat, it's your advantage to be able to aim at that weak point. It feels like it's quite a tricky one to hit. This tank certainly is not even close to the armor that the 703-II has, with that wonderful spacing along the side. Just look at how monstrous this thing is with regards to its side armor and also with regards to its upper hull armor, even when it's not angled. So if you're expecting this thing to be the apocalypse tank with incredible armor and gun depression and a double barrel to go along with it, yeah, that's not going to be the case. The hull armor really falls apart against tier 8, 9, and 10 tanks, but you will be able to use it effectively against 6, 7, and most tier 8 vehicles. So this tank gets a standard 1,500 hit points. Its upgraded engine actually has a good chunk of health, although while I was playing with the stock engine, I did get set on fire a few times, so definitely watch out for that if you're planning to try and save the free experience. And with 350 meters view range, yeah, it's dubious about whether you can make coated optics work on this tank. Because it's an auto reloader, you can't use a gun rammer. You're going to have to try and find a different module to use. I personally like to use vents. I personally like to use vertical stabilizers, and I'd probably go with binoculars on this tank unless you absolutely utterly have to have a gun lane drive. But considering how much better the aim time is on this vehicle than something on the 703-II, and also the fact that it's got better sniping capacity, I think that the IS-2-II would do better to increase its view range when it needs to. At long distances, it can snipe. So now I want to talk about my plan for upgrading the IS-2-II as it comes out today, and a lot of you will be asking about that. So firstly, to be able to get this tank, you have to have the 100mm gun unlocked on the KV-3, and you need, I think it's 51,300 experience to be able to get the IS-2-II. Once you've unlocked it, you won't have any of the modules available on this tank outside of the radio, but does the radio even really matter? It has unique tracks, unique engine, unique turret, and a unique gun that you're all going to have to purchase. Now, the interesting thing is that the turret weighs the same for both versions, and so you don't actually need to upgrade the tracks on this tank. And also, the 85mm gun, when it changes into the 100mm gun, is actually lighter, so your tank actually gets faster when you use a bigger caliber gun on this tank. Bizarre, that. So that means that you definitely don't need the tracks on this vehicle. Also, the turret, you can use both guns on this tank without actually upgrading the turret. So I thoroughly recommend that you try and get rid of this 85mm gun as quickly as you possibly can, because 180 alpha damage on a tier 8 heavy just doesn't feel right at all. I would thoroughly recommend to get the 100mm. It's 19,600 experience, and I think it's well worth saving the free experience, or maybe try and do some daily doubles in this tank until you manage to unlock it. And once you've got the 100, yeah, this tank's pretty darn decent. I was able to just play well right from the get-go. I didn't really feel like I needed the turret. I didn't really feel like I needed the engine or the tracks, although they definitely helped, and they did hold me back in certain situations, as I'm going to be showing you in the gameplay. But yeah, this tank, in my opinion, pretty competitive after you've unlocked the first gun. That's my recommended upgrade path. Gun, turret, engine, tracks. And so you should be sorted. Well, without further ado, let's go see how it performs in the gameplay, though. Alright, so here we go. We're rolling out on Himmelsdorf Encounter, and wow, this is a bizarre situation right from the get-go. This is a new update. I didn't even realize this was happening in the 1.7.1 patch, and they're changing the spawn locations for the encounter map. Absolutely bizarre, but when you think about it, it makes sense. By changing the spawn locations from being up towards the hill, from being just down below the hill, kind of gives artillery more of a chance to be able to maybe get towards the west of the map, and it encourages players to go and fight in the town rather than simply just going straight up towards the hill. So we have to see how that plays out. So I must clarify that in this replay, I am playing with the top turret and the top gun. I don't have the tracks, I don't have the engine, and so my tank is definitely not the fastest. In retrospect, watching this back, I wish I'd turned my barrels around and actually double fired out the back of the tank to be able to help me go up the hill. So one of the good things about this vehicle is that because it carries so much ammunition, you could probably actually get away with firing lots of shells just behind your vehicle with a double barrel fire to be able to give yourself a little bit of a speed boost. And no, I'm not trolling. It's always hilarious when I do it on stream that a lot of people think, oh, he's joking, right? That doesn't actually work. Ha ha ha. Yes, it does. As you would have seen if you watched my full preview on the Object 703-II. Alright, so the IS-2-II has finally made it on top of the hill, but yeah, Encounter feels very different now. It's not the instant the whole of your team, or at least 2/3 of your team, is on top of the hill and about to swing it out. Everybody's kind of like split up across the map. So I think that makes the Encounter more exciting, and I think it's actually a good change by Wargaming, no matter how much I enjoyed the previous kind of gameplay on Himmelsdorf Encounter. Alright, so I actually missed the tracks there of the IS-2-II. Let's talk about the intra-clip reload, and let's talk about the way that you fire double barrel shots inside this tank. So, the 703-II actually has a 3-second double barrel charge time. This tank actually only has a 2-second double barrel charge time. So what that means is that you can be a lot more reactive with the double barrel shots that you fire in this tank. Now, double barrel vehicles, if you're watching this for the first time, they have 3 different fire modes. One is to fire a single shot, reload, and when it happens, it switches the barrels of the vehicle. The other option is that you can fire like an auto reloader, where you fire a shot, and then you just wait, and then you fire a shot, and then you fire again. And did you see already? Oh my lord, I am getting trolled by the double barrels on this tank. I look back at that, and can you believe that my shell actually got caught on the dead double barrel tank in front of us? So back to what I was explaining about. So you can play this tank like a single shot tank, or you can play it like an auto reloader, where you can fire one, and then this is the double barrel. 604 damage dealt there to the Pantera. And I like to deliver double barrel shots when I know that I'm not going to need to fire for the next 25 seconds. Because if you do fire double barrel shots, you're actually lowering your damage per minute on this vehicle. It will be quite awkward for you because you have a 4-second lockout timer after you do the double barrel shot. So not only do you have to charge for 2 seconds, you fire both of your shells, and then you have a 4-second lockout timer where your tank's basically not doing any damage per minute at all. So I feel like with the IS-2-II, what you really want to do in a vehicle like this is to probably only fire singles and fire doubles, but the intra-clip reload is actually really long with the tank. I think it's between 3 and 4 seconds, so it's a little bit shorter than the 5 seconds that you would get on the 703-II, but that's still a long time. The whole reload of one of the shells on this vehicle, I believe, is 7.5 seconds. So to have like an intra-clip reload of 4 seconds does feel very awkward. So I found myself having most success in this tank when I was either firing in single or whether I was firing double barrel shots, and I tried my very best to avoid playing the tank as if it was an auto reloader and firing a shell by shell. So I actually managed to wiggle my way to avoiding damage from the 45 TP. I'm trying to look after all of the hit points that I can, because we're going to have to do everything that we can to be able to carry this game. So I was actually thinking, should I try and charge up a double barrel shot there, or should I try and fire a single? I wanted to try and keep my DPM higher, and I was hoping that the other player would have been able to hit him. If he missed or bounced, then I was going to charge up a double barrel shot. Luckily, he managed to pen him. I finish off the 45 TP, and now we can turn our attention towards the cap circle. Alright, so in this situation, we've got to be really careful now, boys and girls, and that is because the enemy team are going to come in from the side, and we can see a TS-5, an SU-100, an IS-2-II there. We are now in a situation where we're outnumbered by 4 tanks. Well, make that 3 tanks. We have to get in the faces of our opponents. We have to kill them as quickly as we possibly can to then stand a hope of being able to turn the tank around and be able to win the engagement. So I'm just angling my lower plate up here. I've got a little bit of time to still be able to harass this KB3. I'm not going to fire another shot because I'm going to fire one, and now I'm going to give him a side hug, try and wiggle my turret in his face, make it awkward for him, and now I'm going to wait for the reload, and actually I managed to completely cock up the scenario there. Apparently I bounced off the KB3. That was incredibly awkward, and I didn't even wait for the shell to be fully reloaded. So I changed what should have been a kill and me having an additional shell into actually me having no shells and the KB3 still being alive. A bounce, if you mistime it in this tank, is absolutely horrific, and it will be a death bell for you if you mess that up. Alright, so a 2 versus 5 situation here, and I'm pretty healthy, so I'm feeling pretty good about this. I'm hoping that we can manage to take this one down. We fire 1 into the T-34-85. Now we've got to try and hit the weak point on top of the TS-5. We managed to do that, and now we're reloading golden rounds. But look, the IS-2-II is already up in my face, and he's got a lot of friends. We'll just focus them down one by one. Focus the T-34-85. Don't let him get to my side. Hopefully try and angle to bounce the IS-2-II, who's also firing premium rounds at me, and he's using the 100, so we're going to have to watch out for that. And this is where this tank is awkward. Do you see when I fire in the intra-clip reload, how bad the damage per minute is? That's not good to have a 10-second reload to do one shot there. I really need to wait to try and actually get my full reloads in here. And there's the SU. I'm not going to fire for a second. Am I going to fire a double shot? And the guy actually jumps up in front, and I managed to pen him, which I'm quite happy about. But the SU-100 on the enemy team is actually about to flank me, so I'm thinking, what shall I do? Shall I focus on the SU or shall I go for the IS-2-II? But I'm thinking, if I can reload here, I can easily get the IS-2-II with a double barrel shot, and so that's what I'm going to go for. But the SU-100 actually bounces off my back, and so I'm going to turn and try and shoot the SU-100, but somehow the double barrel tank absorbs the shot! And so now I'm completely screwed because I can't kill the SU-100, and I can't turn it into a duel versus the IS-2-II. So, ladies and gents, I have already found out something horrific about these double-barreled tanks. And that is that double the barrels mean that there's double the opportunity that you are going to have your shell blocked by the enemy tank. And so if today or tomorrow or whenever you're playing against these double-barrel tanks, or even if you're playing with these double-barrel tanks, be super careful. I managed to have my shells blocked multiple times by enemy double-barrel vehicles, and in fact, I actually managed to block a few shells from enemy tanks with my double-barrel tanks. The fact that your gun barrels are just so huge, if you put them in the faces of your opponents, you can manage to just block their shells if they're trying to aim at your enemies. Or shall I say, aim at your allies. You probably don't want to be trying to block people so you can try and steal their damage on your own team. That would make you a bit of a terrible teammate, right? So, unfortunately, with that shell block, I didn't have the damage to be able to kill the SU-100, and he snuck up behind me and delivered that fatal blow. So I actually used the Battle Hits modification that's included in my mod pack, which you can get via Twitch. Sorry, I don't do a dedicated YouTube video for it anymore, but you can come to Twitch and use the command !mod pack in the chat to always get the latest version to see exactly where that shell that I aimed at the SU-100 hit. And can you believe it? Right on the tip of the barrel, the IS-2-II caught that shell, and that was the difference between me getting that Radley Walters medal and securing a real big carry in the tank and just getting my shot blocked. Watch out when you're playing against an IS-2-II with an IS-2-II. It's completely messy in close quarters combats with the barrels, let me tell you. And Wargaming should really think about whether their physics is suited for the double barrel tanks. Alright, so that last game was against tier 6, tier 7 tanks. Let's see how this vehicle performs against some tier 9 tanks. Alright, so one of my first recommendations for this vehicle, ladies and gents, is that you should remap what key you have the double shot on. You go to your escape key, settings, go to controls, and then think about changing the fire a salvo button. By default, it's by holding down your left mouse button. But let me tell you, there's a significant issue with that. And that is that if you leave it on holding down your mouse button, sometimes you can release and want to fire a single shot and the game will bug or have a little bit of a delay. By remapping the key, and I've remapped it to my C key, and so I've changed my auto reloader reload onto my V key, and so that means that I actually have no delay when I want to switch between doing a double barrel shot to going to a single shot. And that can be very, very strong and very, very useful, and it can make the difference in your games. So that's one of my first recommendations. Another thing is, and I should probably talk about all of the different key bindings I have in World of Tanks, is that I've actually put the C key on the side of my mouse here. And so I've actually got two ways to charge the double barrel shot. I can either, when I want to be really steady and do it at long range and I know I'm not going to have to turn, I can hold down the C key on my keyboard, or if I know I'm in a close quarters combat situation and I need to be able to do everything else, then I can actually use my right thumb on the side of my mouse to be able to charge up a double shot. So we managed to take down the entirety of a 257 there with the support of my team. Well, support of my artillery, I should say. But I was thinking, uh-oh, this is going to be a real bad scenario. But I want to show you just how powerful these tanks can be for these situations. So firstly, we're going to start by firing a single shot. We think, do we need to fall back? And then I realize, oh yes, I do. There's like 5 or 6 tanks in front of me. As we can see, my team has pretty much tunnel visioned on the other side of the map. We're going to fire another single shot on the move while we're reversing, trying to get ourselves back into a safe position, and trying to avoid the E-75 to my right as well by using the wreck. Now we can use the damage per minute of this vehicle and have a quick look at the E-75 and realize he's focusing on somebody else. I might as well let him. I don't really want to shoot him. He's not trying to aim at me, and I'm going to have to deal with a Lerva in front of me. Just by firing singles here, we can start to whittle down our opponents. We get to get them to that stage where they've got 600 hit points, and then if I can do that, then I can finish them off with a double shot. So now, Lerva at 587. I feel like I've got to go for the double. So I've got 600 average damage. Hold it down, and boom, baby! 587 into the Lerva. We completely changed the engagement around on that tier 8 German heavy. Solid stuff. And that's what you have to do in your double barrel tanks. You have to get a feel for it. You have to get an understanding of, should I fire singles? Should I fire doubles? You fire doubles when you know you're not going to be able to reload for a little while. And then you fire singles if you think that you're going to need to keep your damage per minute high. So unfortunately for me, the Lynx gets behind me. I stop focusing on the IS-2-II in front of me, and I managed to get shut down. But considering how little we were, what the short game that we were in here, to be able to pick up 3,800 damage and 1,000 spotting, and be able to pick apart the entirety of that tier 9 tank, yeah, this vehicle was very consistent for me. So our heartbreak on Himmelsdorf was actually the ace tanker for this vehicle, Defender High Caliber Top Gun, and that's 1,056 base without Courageous Resistance. And with Courageous Resistance, this would have been a 1,625 base experience game, so this would have been an ace irrelevant. On our follow-up on Cliff, we managed to keep the team together even though they tunnel visioned and went on a bit of a lemming train down the other flank. We finished top on damage and top on experience again, this time not quite managing to secure the ace. And I did lose some credits as I was resupplying premium consumables at full price on the Russian server, as I don't pre-purchase them on that account. So all in all, the IS-2-II has been one of the most fun heavy tanks I've played recently. I was really enjoying the playstyle of the vehicle. It does feel a little bit sluggish with that top speed limit, preventing it from being able to get into positions, but trust me, if you do get there, and you can get there but at least fairly consistently, slow but consistent, like a tortoise, right? Sometimes it's going to win the race like that. With its sub 15 power to weight ratio, you can do some fantastic stuff. I love the damage per minute that the vehicle has. This is as high as the Progetto 65, for example, at tier 10 with its auto reloader, but to be able to have that double barrel impact as well, it is a tremendous advantage for the vehicle to be able to snipe at long ranges and also to be able to have 2 extra degrees of gun depression over the 703-II. And I would go as far as to say that I think this is the more fun tank. The 703-II does feel absolutely hilarious when you're hiding your lower plate, when you're tilting your upper hull armor up, or even when you're overexposing your side armor, and you do feel like this super heavy tank. The IS-2-II, it's not a super heavy tank, but it's way more flexible and more consistent, I found, inside my games. And after you've got used to the double barrel mechanic, it's probably going to be hard for you to go back to a regular heavy tank, as they almost feel like they're just missing something. Now, is this tank going to be for everyone? I don't think so. I think that a novice player will probably struggle in this vehicle way more than they would do in a tank that has a little bit more armor, or maybe just higher alpha damage, or has more forgiving armor layout. However, for an advanced player, oh man, this double barrel tank, if you use it correctly and you micromanage all of the extra things that you have to do with the extra combat capacity that this vehicle has, yeah, I think you're going to be able to be very influential. And so, the new double-barreled tanks, I think they're going to end up a bit like Marmite. You're either going to love them or you're going to hate them. There are players out there who don't want any new mechanics in World of Tanks and want it to stay exactly the same as it was when the game was first released 10 years ago. And I can completely understand that viewpoint. Why would you change a fantastic game? And it's something that I also stand up for with many aspects that wargaming want to change within it. However, for me personally, they have to try and find new mechanics and they have to try and find new additions to the game to keep people interested and to give you new ways to play. And I feel like the IS-2-II, I'm not sure whether this vehicle is going to be maybe statistically a little bit too good, but it'll actually be quite nice for there to be a tech tree tank at tier 8 that is actually pretty solid, because if we're honest, it's pretty much just premium tanks that are absolutely slaughtering at tier 8 premium right now. Did I just call it tier 8 premium? I just mean tier 8, no premium. It's so hard to even say tier 8 without also adding premium on the end, right? Yeah, that's how bad the premium spam is getting. So all in all, IS-2-II, I really like this tank. I can't wait to keep playing it, get better in it, and start to work my way up towards the tier 9. And once I've worked my way towards the tier 9 and the tier 10, stay tuned to the channel as I'll be giving you full tank reviews of the IS-3-II and also changing my preview to a full review on the ST2, hopefully with a tech tree showcase coming fairly soon. So, ladies and gents, that's it for today. Hopefully you enjoyed this tank review. If you did, give the video a thumbs up, and especially if it was useful with all the module reviews. But if you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know in the comments what you think about the IS-2-II. Do you think it looks different enough from the 703-II? Do you think it looks good? Do you think it looks trash? Do you hate the double-barrel tanks? Do you think that it's a fun new mechanic and you look forward to playing them? Let me know what you think. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic and hopefully I'll see you soon.